Welcome to Growing a Fruitful Brand, where we discuss how to create and grow a brand that will make the world a better place for you, your customers, and your employees. I'm Raj Lula, one of the owners, and today my guest is Darren Horwitz. Darren is the founder of 1010 Group, which is a branding implementation agency. While Fruitful is a branding agency that helps you create your brand, Darren's 1010 Group helps companies discover the process all the way from before you create your brand all the way through the cocktail napkins that are going to be on the airplane, or the PowerPoint presentations that need to be in the boardroom, the folders that need to be handed to clients, all of those things, how the brand lives in the world. Darren has worked with companies like American Airlines, the U.S. Army, other big names that you've heard of, and he gives great advice for what to do with a brand on any budget, from startup all the way through these massive companies and organizations. And I know that you'll get a lot from our conversation. Darren, thanks for being with us today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Before we jump in, can you just tell our folks a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'd love to. Darren Horwitz. I'm the founder of 1010 Group, or 1010. We are a brand implementation firm, which is a fancy way of saying we help organizations figure out what needs to happen, in what order, over what period of time, and for how much when they're going through a corporate rebrand or a brand change of any kind. So I've spent my career really started in television production, but worked my way through the branding agencies to kind of find this white space around just focusing on, a now what question, addressing a now what. So I'm sure you can appreciate that as you go through and create a strategy and a visual identity, and you think about where the brand lives, and you give a client their basic guidelines, or maybe even a little bit more. Now what do they do with it? So my job is to really come in and figure out everywhere that brand lives, and what's the best way to flex it to meet the needs of how it's being used, whether it's being used on a building, or being used in a PowerPoint, or even just being used by individuals on their social media pages. So that's I guess the gist of what I do and what the company does and what we focus on.
Yeah, yeah. Tell us a little bit of who have you worked with, both the agencies and some of the clients that people maybe would recognize.
Sure. So on the agency side, probably less recognizable, but I started my career really getting into branding through a company called Core Brand. From there, I went to work at McCann Erickson on the advertising side, but always kind of in production and retouching. But back to the branding, I went in through Interbrand, which is a global brand agency, where I really blew out the idea of brand implementation. Back then it was production, and we weren't really engaging with clients in any way. It was just kind of building files, but I had a good leader, a good mentor, and we were able to come into it and start to demonstrate that we knew a little bit more than just a template. We actually knew how to get things done, and we could think about it. So we started really turning the brand implementation area upside down, and thinking through a different approach, and getting in front of the question of a rebrand as opposed to the tail end of it. And then from there, I was fortunate enough to be hired away by a company called Future Brand, where they wanted me to basically build out the department and really think through how they could evolve their offering. So it was a great time. But on the client side, really great opportunities, as I say to people, plenty of brands that you know and have heard of, Cadillac, American Airlines, most recently the U.S. Army. So this is throughout my career, but as 1010, we were brought in for the U.S. Army. We just helped launch the spinoff of the three GE companies. We worked on two of the three GE healthcare, and oh, now I'm going to forget the name, but it was the aviation side of it. And then we worked more closely with the healthcare side, extending things. And then we just in the last 2 months helped launch Moody's and get them off the ground with building out their tools and templates and guidelines and helping them convert things. So also little known companies, local regional healthcare companies throughout the country, some nonprofit organizations. So there's a mix: size, scale, reach, geographies, businesses, consumer facing, business facing, behind the scenes. But we approach it in a very similar way of they're all trying to rebrand in one way, shape, or form.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's great. That one of the reasons that I was so interested to talk to you with our audience was, we have done a ton of work locally and even across the country, but we've not yet had the opportunity to work with brands like American Airlines, Cadillac, and U.S. Army, and so one of the questions for me, when I first got introduced to you, was just sort of like, you know on our level, a full rebrand package can cost anywhere from 30 to $100,000. So probably somewhere in the middle there. Let's call it 50. Could just kind of midline it there. And so, but then we hear about either through the news or Wall Street Journal or wherever that American Airlines, whoever, just went through $1 million rebrand. And so I sit here. My business partner Ben is a very, very talented artist and makes great brands. And I go, okay, is this brand really, you know, 200 times better designed than, or 2000 times better, whatever number, better designed than what Ben does? And so I'd love to just kind of hear from you, like, what are the differences between let's just start with graphic design, but like, what's the difference between the design that becomes the tail of an American airline plane and the design that gets done for a local nonprofit or healthcare company when you're working with really talented people, assuming that the people are competent and actually are professional in their field? What's the difference between that level and the $1 million level in terms of the quality of design?
Interesting. So, first off, I think design is subjective, and that's not a bad thing. I think that you can start to look at design through the lens, and probably should look at the design through the lens of strategy. And so, as I'm sure you guys can appreciate and probably attest to, is that when you think about how your brand manifests itself through the visual identity, it needs to be tied back to a brand strategy, which should be tied back to a business strategy. Um, the difference between, say, using a global agency like an Interbrand, or maybe working with companies such as yours or mine, I don't know that the quality changes. I think the price tag for sure. I think the access to how much you can throw at a project in the way of talent
Mm.
changes. So I'm sure I don't have people sitting around idle. That's expensive. And that expense gets passed on to a client, by the way.
Yeah.
So I bring in the right talent for the right challenge to create the right answer. Now, sometimes that might be one designer or that might be four designers. It just depends on what we're doing. But the idea is not to have four people sitting around on staff waiting for work to be done, because that's expensive and you have to fill that. So I think there's a big difference there. I don't know about you, but for me, being out of the agencies, I no longer have access to the junior talent the way I used to. I can't see the rising stars who are learning and cutting their teeth on big projects where they can afford to make mistakes. There's a whole group of people to mentor them and teach them. Rather, I need somebody who can do the job that I need to get done, because again, it goes back to how I'm structuring my projects. So it presents an interesting challenge, and everybody that I work with is probably a little bit more expensive than I want them to be, but at the same time, I don't have to teach them. Mentoring is a
Yeah.
little different. So I think there's an expertise that probably comes into the level of work that we're doing that maybe you may get some of that at an agency, you should, but you also may get some junior people, which is not a bad thing. It just means they can put more people on it. I think the ability to try and connect different thoughts together at the larger agencies is probably easier to do than in a smaller shop. And again, I don't know that this is a bad thing, but I know that what we do is a specialty. That's what my business does. You can bring us into a project to do our job. We can be a part of a larger group or we can be independent on our own. It doesn't matter, but we can kind of come and go. And I think there's a lot of flexibility, and I think that's a smart way to go. I think to maintain a department like mine within an agency means, again, you got to constantly feed us. We need to be doing things. It ebbs and flows a little bit differently, and I think that again goes back to the budgeting point. Quality wise, I don't know that you'd find it different. Experience wise, maybe you would. So I would ask you, I was very fortunate in my career. I got access to projects. I got access to, so just again, full transparency, American Airlines was done at Future Brand when I was hired there to go in and work on that. I got access to that project. I had to prove myself to others to be able to go out on my own to get access to the bigger projects. I still get access to them now, but there was a period of time when I first started where regional healthcare, smaller projects, because I was an unknown. Now I'm known as an individual. I'm known as a business within my community. I can go out and reach people, and the bigger agencies are bringing me in. Again, still getting access to bigger clients. But I would ask you, how difficult do you find it to go out there and get access to the bigger ones versus, where maybe more local, more regional might be easier access?
Yeah, there's a big art museum here in Omaha that's world class. It's called the Joslin Art Museum, and they just announced a rebrand. And I feel like it's unusual for things like that to happen in Omaha that I at least have not caught wind of at all. And so I'm reading about it on social for the first time, like everybody else, and I go, oh, okay. And there's a moment where, as a local agency, it's like, who did it?
Yeah.
It's like, who got the chance that we didn't get? Um, and then I googled it and found out that it wasn't anybody local. It was Pentagram,
Oh,
and I was like, oh, okay. Like there's an
right. It's
immediate.
how do you even compete with that? And
Yeah.
nobody ever got fired for hiring Pentagram, right? Nobody
Right.
gets
Yeah.
fired for hiring Interbrand. So yeah, how do you compete with that?
Yeah, and I will say that for our audience who's listening, who maybe doesn't geek out about brand agencies the way we do, it's like Pentagram. I think was the one who did Hillary's campaign or Obama's or both, and so you're talking like huge national things, and so it's like, okay, I mean, if they hired Pentagram, like you said, nobody gets fired for hiring the agency that did Obama's campaign or that did just these huge, highly recognizable things. It's a totally safe bet. And I also think that the other thing, kind of answer your question about getting bigger work, is that there's a reason why most agencies' prices are not exposed. It would be really, really nice for us to just be able to put up on a website and go, hey, this is what it's going to cost to do a rebrand, and it's going to be the exact same process every time, and it's going to be the exact same product every time. But the truth is that when you work with companies from large to small, then it is different processes. So we've had the pleasure of working with First National Bank here in town, which is the largest privately owned bank in the country, and when we worked with them, we had to charge more because there's more layers of approval. And so what we could normally do if we're sitting face to face with the owner of a company and going, and we didn't do their rebrand, by the way, we worked on other projects for them, but if you're sitting face to face with the owner of a small business that's doing $1 million a year, $5 million a year, $10 million a year, and you can make a decision with that person in the room, then it takes less time. And the old adage of time is money is true. And so you mentioned something, remind me, when you worked with the Army and you priced in a certain number of revisions with them, and they came back to you and told you something different. What was that?
Well, yeah, I'll say in general, less specific about one client and the other, but I think to your point, at a larger level, you have to gauge the amount of socialization, revisions, to your point, you know, how much more do I need to spend time wise
Yeah.
with a smaller organization or a local organization? And I guess a better way to say it would be, who do you have access to? Do you have
Yeah.
access to the decision maker directly, or are you getting it through layers of people who are all weighing in? And by the time it gets to you, it's a telephone game and it just takes longer to get there. And I think that's okay. But to your point, you need to be honest with yourself about this. And as a client, you need to be honest with yourself. And so we've had clients who were very honest. And in the case of the Army, the honesty was, there are layers of socialization that we need to account for that we don't think you are. And it wasn't so much that we were underpricing it or anything like that, or overpricing it. It was more about, in the scope language that we, like we typically do, is we say, and up to 2 rounds of revision, excuse me, at every step. And they said, well, hold on, are you accounting for all of these things? And we said, no, because typically it goes pretty smoothly. They said, we're a different beast. And you need to account for that. And we said, okay,
Yeah.
great. And they were very honest about it. And once
Yeah.
they told us, you don't get frustrated by, oh, how many times do I need to present the same materials? Because you know, going into this, okay, so this is about getting approval at every layer.
Yeah.
Sorry, I want to go back to one thing though, and I want to keep going, and I don't mean to derail you, but the one thing that I would say is different about a larger agency and more of ones our size, less about the quality and more about, do clients see themselves in your work? And so,
Hmm.
for example, if I think about an airline or a healthcare system, even better, healthcare wants to work with people who have worked in healthcare.
Yeah.
That's because they say we're a very nuanced business. We have a lot of things that we need to think about. You can't just walk in here thinking that you can rebrand healthcare because you rebranded a restaurant. And they're not wrong. But I think to your point, the process of rebranding, I think, is pretty constant that you go through. I think it's the inputs and the outputs that change what you get from it. And so whether you're a small company or a big organization, I think we try and keep people through the same process. But as you say, within there, okay, do I have direct access to a CEO who can make decisions quickly, or do I need to go through rounds of, socialization, and what's different about this project that either drives time or money to it? And then lastly, again, okay, do I have the credentials to demonstrate I know their business that allows me to come in and say, I can solve your problems in a credible way? I think that's really what the bigger agencies have access to more than maybe we do.
And that makes a ton of sense too. And there are certain clients that if we were to take them on would dwarf our capabilities. We know that. Like we would love, a situation like, American Airlines or a major healthcare system, to be brought in as maybe the designers just on a very specific piece of that overall project. But a project that size where there needs to be massive amounts of user research or market demographic research, all those things brought into the project, we would be swamped by some of those things. And like you said, it's great for you to be honest about the resources that you'd need to bring into a project like that. And for us, we'd love to take on something like locally it's CHI, the healthcare system.
Hmm.
But it would be smarter for us to do it in partnership with other agencies that do have that expertise and go, hey, we're going to set you up here. This is the scope that you need to handle, and then we'll take it from there. Those kinds of partnerships are great and can work really, really well. But the larger agencies that have these folks just waiting around for that next type of work are they're already set up to do those things, but it also makes it incredibly expensive, and you have to be able to be in for that kind of investment in order to for that to work.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think the thing that works for me is I believe that I'm in a somewhat unique end of the business where we're focusing on something that people don't really either a want to focus on or have focused on in the past. It's a rare thing. I think the part of the business that you're in with the strategy and the creative, it's a different type of sell and a different
Yeah.
challenge that you're facing. But I think what you're doing incredibly well, and what I think is very smart, is your 30-day sprint process. And I think if you can demonstrate the value in that, which is, I imagine, to keep people on a budget and on a time frame, and again to say, look, the process should be consistent, but your needs and the variation in your needs are going to drive the creative to be different for you and unique for you, right? I think that's an incredible ability to sell that and speak to it and deliver on it. I mean, that's fascinating to
Thank
me.
you.
As long
Yeah.
as, from the guy who then handles the now what question, as long as you don't shortchange it in the process, so that on the back
Totally.
end they can't do anything with it. But it does. I don't think that's what you're doing. I think you're setting people up for tremendous success within a framework that works for everybody. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah, and thank you for that. Yeah, for us, a lot of the brand sprint concept. I actually just had a client reach out, or a potential client reach out, that said we failed your 30-day brand sprint quiz, and They're like, so can we still work with you or not? I go, yeah, it's just not on 30 days.
60 days.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
you're in the 60-day camp.
Yeah, and because a lot of what that product is for is it's for businesses that are 0 to 10 million who are going to have a decision maker in the room, can devote a couple of intensive days to do it, and then it will be responsive over the course of 30 days to get answers back. That would not work for the U.S. Army. It would not work for American Airlines by any means with our process and our resources.
No, but
But
it might
yeah,
work with First National Bank, though. It could.
yeah, even them, they're probably a little bit big for it, but certainly a local bank, one that has 8 or 10 branches or
Yeah.
something like that, and yeah, certainly, it would work for them. It would work for like a medical practice, and there's some pretty decent accounting firms here in town. Like anybody who can get the people in the room that need to be there and can make decisions quickly and want that. I mean, that's another big piece of it too. Is how big is the appetite for? We know that we need to change. We know we've sat on the need for this change for way too long, and rather than it dragging out over 6 months or a year, we just want to do it. We're ready to get down and do the work with you, and we're excited about the result. The In terms of the creative, there's no short change at all. It's actually as good, if not better, that because there nobody loses steam on the project.
Yeah. There's no
Everybody is all
fatigue.
in for
Yeah.
the whole time. Yep.
Oh.
And so then you don't look at like you're not spending time going like maybe we should go back to the third shade of green, not the eighth shade of green. You just don't have that hand wringing because you just rely more on people's ability to know their own brands, know their own companies, and be able to make decisions that they know is going to serve their customers really well.
I think that's brilliant. I think one thing you were talking about in the very beginning was the cost difference of rebrands. And the thought you were saying 30,000 or 100,000 to a million, and the thought going through my head was add a zero to that, if not more. But what I
Yeah,
realized was in thinking that there's actually two costs to a rebrand. Just kind of go back to what you were saying. There's the brand creative strategic identity work, and then there's the out of pocket expenses. And so
yeah,
when we think about somebody like American Airlines or even a bank, their biggest expense is going to be in signs and planes.
yeah.
And so that's where it goes. But when you take that number aside and you then say, okay, but what does the rebrand cost aside from redoing my business cards or, thinking about the signs or anything else that's an expense or CapEx, still an expense. And you focus mostly on how much they're investing in their brand, then I think your numbers yes, they're right and they're much more manageable. But I wonder, have you come across with your work where that there's additional expenses? It's not necessarily your expenses or related to it, but that
Hmm.
there's a question of you will have to do more beyond this. And I'm wondering, when you're working with clients on the 30-day sprint, going in, are they prepared for what comes after that, or even any project for that matter? Do you find that clients are prepared for, okay, this is a big piece, but it's not the only piece to a brand?
Yeah. Most of the clients who do the 30-day brand sprint are going to be B2B, which is a huge qualifier
Yeah.
because if you're B2C and you've got a storefront that you need to do, or multiple storefronts, multiple locations, you've got signage that you need to do. You've got, we've worked with a few banks now, and it's like you've got the mobile app, and maybe the mobile app isn't controlled in house because a lot of financial mobile apps are just reskin products. So we got to have a lead time working with the folks who actually did that, manage the app, and they need the logos in these formats and kind of all those things. Yeah, there are some folks that especially if they have a heavily client facing or public facing element to their brand, it is going to be more difficult for them, and they likely would not be a good fit for a 30-day brand sprint.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense.
A B2B company where we're going to flip your website on and off overnight, basically, change everybody's email footers, and And then, yeah, there's going to be marketing collateral. You're going to have either some old brochures to throw away, or just go, hey, they're not that different, and so just don't reorder any more of that one. And in 3 months, when you run out of them, we'll redesign the new ones. All those things. The costs just tend to be significantly lower when you're in that B2B space, as opposed to, yeah, like you're saying, it's like every terminal in the United States needs a new American Airlines logo, and
Yeah.
all those things. That makes a huge difference
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
implementation costs.
I love B2B. I mean, I love working on all brands. Let me say that, but B2B, I find it to be, um, it's just a different type of client, right?
Yeah,
I think it's
100%.
a different need and a different pace, and it's a different type of partnership. And I think the role we play in the consumer facing clients versus the B2B clients, it's just slightly different. Both are good, both provide value. Um, but I think the experiences are different, the needs are different. And to me, and the timing and the pricing, yes, I think are different. Um, and I find that with the B2Bs, there's definitely a what do we need? Okay, what can we afford question, and how do we make the most use of our money? So I mean, I know you were just using this as an example, but when someone says to us, what do we do with our brochures? Our advice is business as usual as best you can.
Yeah,
Unless you're a bank and you can't do that. But if you're in the B2B space, you have to ask yourself the cost of flipping a brochure, to your point, Raj, is it that much? Is it worth it? So high profile, high impact, shelf life, inventory, all of these are things that we as brand implementation people start to think about is what's the ripple effect of this rebrand, and where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck as you carry this forward, because you are investing money, whether it's 5 figures or 8 figures doesn't make a difference. You're making an
yeah,
investment, and it's a big investment. And it's not only an investment in money, you're investing in change management, you're investing in your people. So I think there's a part of this that says not just the creative, but the use of the creative, the story behind the creative, the story behind the brand needs to be learned and told by people. And I think again, the idea of doing this in 30 days is phenomenal. I think it's awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Thank you.
yeah.
I think another thing that goes into that question of like, do we throw the brochures away, is also the reason for the
Yeah.
rebrand. If it's because the brake pads were failing and people were dying in car accidents, and you need to change the name of the company real
Yeah.
fast
Yeah.
and fire the leadership and completely restart, you got to throw everything away. You got to act
Papa
like your new
John's went through
company.
that, right? They
Yeah,
had a real crisis problem going on that they had to quickly go through a rebrand and get rid of everything. So I
yeah,
agree with that. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
yeah. So I'd love to, because you're such an expert in this. It feels like it'd be such a waste to not, kind of dive a little bit deeper into what you do. Talk to me about one of my favorite things in branding. I think, not to start beef with one of your former clients, but I think that Southwest brand as an airline is really, really good, because they're so clever with, like, their little trucks that are out on the runway. They say the snacks are on me, and then
Hmm.
their cocktail napkins that have the, like, original flight plan diagram. It's just that triangle, 3 cities in Texas, and it just seems like everything they do is such a branded experience all the way through. I think of kind of like we talked about, where the heart logo with the three stripes, the original colors, and it's a nod to the Love Airport in Dallas. All those things, like a brand or an agency our size could do that piece of it 100%. We could have gotten to that logo. It's not complicated. Even come up with a few clever ideas for early trucks and napkins, that kind of stuff. But the stuff that you do, of like getting it all the way through the system, and what do the PowerPoint decks look like, and what do all the napkin looks like, and the peanut packages and all those things. Tell me about that. Like, you're
Yeah.
approaching a major thing. What do you have to think about when you're doing something on that scale?
Everything. Everything. um, I think there's so much in there that if I, I, I straddle the line between often being completely overwhelmed by the size of a project to Yeah, well, let's just break it down. It's no big deal. And I go back and forth,
Yeah.
and I won't lie. When Siegel and Gale came to us about the Army, that was the agency who brought
Hmm.
us in. I was a bit trepidatious. I was like, this is big, and frankly, it was a little scary. I knew it was going to be a meaty thing. I knew there was a lot of intricacies that go into it, and I also knew that these were people who put their lives on the lines every day to defend others. And so there was a
Yeah.
seriousness to it, and a brevity that I was like, okay, it was a little scary.
I mean,
Uh,
that brand is almost as big as the United States itself. I mean, when you
yeah,
talk about, like, it is one of the most public facing brands of our nation.
it
And yeah, and in this world, I mean, our nation has one of the biggest brands in the world. And beyond that, I mean, you're basically talking about the only things bigger than that are like Christianity, you know, like when you're
right.
talking,
Yeah,
it's like
it's
you're getting real big pretty soon
yeah,
there.
it's a little freaky. But I take a step back and I remind myself, hey, I've done this before. I've faced big brands, and I personally like stepping into shoes a little bit bigger than I'm used to because I learn from it and I grow. But I constantly am trying to ground myself in, I know this. Let's break this down into its parts. And that would be my advice to clients because they feel equally as scared and they've never done this before. So I can't freak out. So we actually, there's a couple of things that help me personally. One is I have a partner here within 1010, Beth. Beth is awesome. She keeps me grounded. The other thing is we came up with something a while ago in the company. At any time, only one of us can be freaked out at a time. That's it. The other one, just no matter what, you just got to take them off the ledge. It doesn't matter if you're both freaked out. You can't be. It's just that simple.
It's
So
like a marriage
it,
too.
it, it is. It is. And it's not just with Beth, it's the entire company. Like I remind everybody that works with us, hey guys, only one of us can freak out at a time. If it's you, that's totally cool. Just let me know. But I remind myself to break it down. And then I say to clients the same thing. Look, I know this is overwhelming. And they are legitimately freaked. Maybe not at the Army, but everybody goes through and oh my gosh, what have we just signed up for? So I try and break it down. And so the way we do that is we just say, look, let's just start by asking people what they do. Excuse me. And it used to be we'd get in a room with people pre-pandemic, and now post-pandemic, we had to pivot and we had to figure out a way to reach people and collect data. And it
Yeah.
actually worked out in our favor where we do this through online surveys. So throughout my career, I've been able to start to catalog the types of pieces or things that get branded across the board. And every industry is different, but we have a whole inventory of things that if you're the military, we check boxes and we say, okay, these things we think will be applicable to you. And it may not be applicable to excuse me, to everybody in the organization, but chances are somewhere there's going to be people that we reach that say, I do this. And this is the best part actually, because it used to be in the room, marketing teams would say, okay, yeah, we know what we do here. We say, well, hold on. That's a marketing perspective. If you want to be successful, you need to bring other people to the table from different disciplines. You want people from HR representing. You want people from procurement there. You want the digital or IT team, facilities. You want people there who do different things. And the reason is because we'd go through this entire exercise of, do you do this? Do you do this? Do you do this? And inevitably somebody at one end said, no, we never do that. And somebody at the other end would say, hold on, we do that all day long. And so a couple of things were happening. One is, well, we just earned our price. But the more important piece was that they were learning from one another. We learned what they did, but they learned from one another. And it
Yeah.
was a great moment that would happen. And so as I think about, to answer your question directly, it's just breaking it down, thinking through things logically, and talking to different people within an organization about what they do and what their needs are and how. And I think if you're talking about a smaller organization, I think it's very simple to say, this is what we're trying to achieve. What is it that you do? What do you need? Now, many times they need some prompting. But the bigger organizations are no different. They are larger and they're spread out, but we're looking for representation to give us a sense. And then when you get back from that, you can say, okay, here are the types of things that they have. We don't need to solve every single thing right now. We need to look at this and solve for the masses and be very smart. So I use, in the world of print collateral or digital collateral, I would say you're not templatizing everything. You're trying to find the least amount of templates to do the most amount of work, the least amount of guidelines
Yeah.
to do the most amount of work. So an annual report does not get a template or guidelines. It's a one-off piece that happens once a year. A brochure, on the other hand, probably could use some templates and guidelines and design, because that can scale to 30 other pieces, even if they're different. It'll solve problems. Now you break that down, you solve that, then you start to work your way back up and you say, okay, let's think about the onboard experience. So it goes, I would say at that point, you start thinking through journey mapping and you look at this from the lens of a consumer. Where do I start to engage this brand? And so when I was not so much working on American, but when I was pitching American at a different agency, I might add, we started to think through what's the journey that one goes through just from our own experiences before we even get into a room and get the job. Let's just imagine this. So think about it. I wake up, I decide I want to take a flight. Great. What do I do? Well, I probably go on the website and do a little research. Okay, so what am I interacting with there? Well, I've got a website. I've probably, maybe there's some follow up emails, whatever it is. We can think an app. We can think logically. Then I go to take a flight. What happens? Well, I get to the airport. What's the first thing I do? I look for my sign that says, where's the airline? Well, that's probably airport controlled. Okay, but there's a logo there. Great, got it. Now I go into the baggage, handling outside. Then I go inside and you work your way through and you just start to think about these things logically. So I would say in the bigger companies, there's a lot more that you need to think through and we need, people need help. I would say in a smaller organization that knows their business through and through, you probably could work through this even, I'm thinking back to your 30-day sprint. You could think through this in your 30-day sprint. Just what is it that you do? Where's the brand being used? And the trick is to just go beyond your own purview, bring
Yeah.
others to the conversation. But yeah, so it's a lot. And I can go either way, getting overwhelmed by it or just grounding myself and say, yeah, let's just break it down and keep chipping away and chipping away. And let's just be honest with ourselves that nobody is going to get 100% inventory of everything they have in a time frame that's reasonable. Because by the time
Yeah.
you get to the end, stuff's already done and old and no longer needed, and you've missed new things. So it's how do you reach it in mass? How do you start to make smart, informed decisions? How do you empower people to then take that information and scale it out so that they can go back to their day jobs and start to apply the brand across the things, the napkins, the cups, the cup holders, whatever it is, in whatever experience you have, you're giving people enough information to be able to make informed decisions and connect dots, I think is the way to go. So does that address
Yeah.
your question?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And I think, one of the other things I was going to ask about is, bringing this down on the level of a small business, somebody who's doing well for themselves. They're doing $5 or $10 million a year. And, I love this idea of putting yourself in the customer's shoes. And, for me, one of the things I always tell our companies that we work with is that if you can't either afford to do it or don't even have the capacity, like bandwidth, to think about some of the brand implementation all the way down to something. So say you're a financial planner or something, and you know that there's going to be some important documents that people are going to sign as part of this process. And you go, okay, we're going to brand the folder that these documents are in because we want that to be full of trust and like it's backed by the brand and all that kind of stuff. And then you go, okay, what do we do with the pen? And I always tell people that it's way better to have an unbranded good pen than it is to have a branded bad pen. And
100%.
I'm curious your thoughts on that. Of like,
We have an
yeah,
expression. I did not make this up, but I've been credited with it by others. But it definitely was not mine. Um, right for not like for like, and it's mostly
mm,
applicable within the world of signs. And the statement is just because you do it today does not mean you need to brand it tomorrow. It's an expensive
Yeah.
way to go. There is such a thing as over branding, and brand is beyond your logo. So let's remember that. So to your point,
Yep.
I think this really nails it, which is it's about the experience and the
Yes.
interaction. So the overall experience is I get a nice branded, logoed, thoughtful designed folder. And strategically, I have thought through the interaction that one has with everything inside of there. And it's the package that I need to invest in. The paper is it's a laser printout. That's easy. You can do that with a
Hmm.
Microsoft Word document. That's a simple fix. The pen is just a nice pen that writes well and doesn't run out of ink. Um, but that said, maybe I think the question comes down to strategically, you're a financial planner or an accountant, you're having people sign things all the time. Maybe that one pen is the right thing to do over
Right.
something
100%.
else. I'm not saying right or wrong in that point. I think the question is not what does it look like? That's the easier answer. It's should I even be doing this? And
Yeah.
does it subscribe to, again, going back to business strategy, which drives brand strategy, which drives your brand experience and expression and the way people interact with you, which drives loyalty and choice. So you got to start back at the question of does it even make sense? And there's a great example. This is what I use with clients. Um, I worked for a health insurance company when I was at the agencies. We went through a rebranding, and we go through the whole exercise. And the end of this, we're just kind of checking. The client and I are checking in with different groups to make sure they have what they need. And one of them was open enrollment group who went out there and signed people up for insurance. We said, "How's it going? Do you have everything you need?" "Oh yeah, the logo works great on our syringe pens." "I'm sorry, your what?" "Our syringe pens." "Pen that looks like a syringe." "Yeah, when you click on it, the pen point goes down like a syringe." I'm like, "Uh-huh." I turned to my client. I said, "Does that feel on brand to you?" He said, "Not at all." And while it looked right, it really, you're signing people up to insurance. It might have been just a little bit of a miss. And to your point, Raj, I think the better opportunity might have just been a regular pen. Um,
Yeah.
with no branding as opposed to what they were doing, which is just it just felt off. But yeah,
Yeah, because
mhm.
it's reminding people of the most one of the most painful parts of a healthcare experience. And let's be honest, health insurance
I don't know
companies don't
many
exactly
people
have a
like.
great reputation for not being painful.
Yeah, I was going to
And
say.
so,
I mean, you got so much going on in there. It's very nuanced at that point. It's like, okay, one, I don't know many people who like going in and getting shots, and
yep.
two, I got to deal with an insurance company, and it's like those two things together. It's just like, let's maybe there's something else you want to remind people of.
I actually think in that situation, to your point, sometimes you don't do anything at all. Sometimes the best brand move is to just not, it's like use a regular pen that works well. It's not like those restaurants where you like have to scratch a bunch to get the thing to sign the
There
receipt.
you
It's
go.
awful. But use a good pen. The other thought though is say, okay, let's think even of that moment of the getting the shot. I think you'd be better off as a healthcare company handing the person a lollipop after go and going, "Hey, I know I'm not your doctor and you didn't get a shot, but this is the best part of healthcare anyway." So, and it could be a regular, Tootsie Roll Pop but it's just like, it's that thoughtful experience of going, "Hey, I recognize that you did a thing that was hard today and you deserve a sucker." Just like when you get a shot at the thing.
Well,
That might be a better branded experience than
yeah, and not
a
only that, but
syringe
you're
pen.
leaving on a better note than you came in with, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's a positive experience. So, coincidentally, I was at the dentist yesterday. Um, I hated going to the dentist. From a
Mm,
kid, it was painful. I didn't like it. I was so afraid to the point where as an adult, I stopped going for a while, right? The worst thing
yeah.
ever. And then I just, as my teeth started telling me what a bad decision that was.
Yeah.
I said, okay, I'm going to invest in getting things right and better. But it started with finding a dentist in my adult life, and my wife did a little bit of research, and she came back. She said, "I want you to go to this person. They really focus on more pain management than just dentistry. It's their whole
Mm,
philosophy is much different." And I almost said this to the dentist yesterday, and I will the next time I see him, which is I used to hate going. I look forward to it now. And I know that's
Wow.
stupid. I don't look forward to it because I'm like, oh, I want to go to the dentist. It's no,
Right.
because look how far I've come that I can actually go in, sit in the chair. I don't get all freaked out. Yeah, there are moments when they use a Cavitron or whatever that thing is with the water, the really high pitched water pick that kind of freaks me out a little bit. But I'm not afraid of any sort of discomfort, and they do such
Yeah.
a good job. And one of the things was, it was such a simple thing. I noticed this when he went to give me a shot of Novocaine once. He started grabbing my cheek and like putting some pressure and smacking me around a little bit with, you know. But what I realized what he was doing was he was focusing my thoughts elsewhere as he gave me the shot of Novocaine, so I didn't even feel it, and it was just
Mm,
a brilliant little thing that I was like, okay. So again, I'm going off on a tangent here with the dentist, but the point being is that they're focused on the experience.
yeah.
It's not a pen. It's not, it's not the folder. It is, I'm walking out of there able to tell people about a positive experience with this dentist. And I think that's what you remember most. You just said, yeah, we've all been there with the restaurant and the pen doesn't work. Yeah, you remember that. Pen sucks. How do I sign my name? It's such a simple fix. Um, but the positive experience is the one that's going to keep you coming back. The negative ones you're going to tell people about. You're going to say, didn't make sense to me. I didn't like this. Small companies or big companies, I think they face similar problems. It is a
Yeah.
positive reinforcement. And so your idea of a doctor giving a lollipop at the end, positive reinforcement. Love it. I think that's great.
And the reason the folder, why we think about the folder, is because of the experience that it represents, which is that in order to use a branded folder, you've got to go to the specific part of the office or have a stack of them in your office, and then you go, okay, this person's coming today. I got to get that folder out, and these documents go in that folder, as opposed to the opposite experience being, okay, oh, you're here to sign the papers. Okay, hang on, let me go through and print those out. Oh, nope, sorry,
Yeah.
that's the Lewis's, not the Lula's. So okay, we and then it's like, okay, let me print that. Oh, printer's out of paper. Hang on. Sorry, guys. I got to go. It's like, that's the difference. That, the branded experience there is that you've done all of the work for them in the difficult, complex thing of the financial planning, all of that. And the folder represents that. The folder just goes, hey, we knew this moment was coming. We had the documents prepared before you even got here. Because if you're the kind of person who's even doing financial planning, you're a busy person. You've got better things to do with your time and money. We want to make sure that this is seamless for you and that we're serving you well. That's what it's really about. It's not, you could have all green folders or I've actually got a notebook in front of me here that, this is just a moleskin notebook, but we stamped our logo on it
But
because we didn't want to.
sorry, you just said a
Yeah.
name there that's incredibly important.
Yeah.
Moleskin,
Yeah.
because that's the experience.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're good. Yeah.
and then you put your brand on it. I do. I have, well, not on this one, but I've got notebooks here, and of course I don't have one handy, but I put 10. Oh, here we go. This is my to-do book, and I've got my name on there. Again, little things, but it's the book that I love.
Yeah.
The name is second,
and
but
and
yeah,
I've used knockoff moleskins that, because your swag companies will be like, hey, I mean, the actual moleskin's kind of expensive to brand, but there's the knockoff one, and when the spine cracks and it doesn't feel exactly right and all that, then your brand is on that.
yeah.
It's like, I'd rather you literally go to Costco and buy a 10 pack of moleskins and put a stamp or a sticker on it with your brand on it, so that they get the good experience of using the notebook, rather than you cheaping out, getting an inferior thing and going, this is the good idea to put our brand on.
I,
That's not what I would do at all.
I'm going to bring it back to Southwest, and not Southwest specifically, but carrying the thread from the financial planner. I think the other part of this is by having somebody sit there while you print things out, the printer's not working, and you're showing them, yeah, it's real life, but you're showing them all the things that are like, just if these are the mistakes that are happening here, what are you doing with my money? Right. And
Yeah.
so the
Yep.
professionalism that comes out of it's prepackaged, we've got everything there. It's like, whoa, that was easy. But it goes now, fast forward to the airline. My boss at the time, um, His philosophy was, do you know why it's important to brand the I'm going to forget the equipment on the ground equipment, but it was all the different ground equipment, why it was important to paint it, keep it fresh and things like that. And I said, tell me. And he said, because as a passenger on a plane looking out at the ground equipment, if they're not treating that well, how are they treating the plane? And so
Yeah.
psychologically, there's a question that says, look, if I painted this and I put this much effort into my equipment, this is the pride that I have in everything that I do. This is how I treat the plane. This is how I treat the passengers and things like that. And I think it goes right back to what you were saying with the folder. It's the same concept, right? It's the same thing with the
Yeah.
notebook, right? Whether it's the Moleskine experience that you're looking for, or it's the Costco book that's just as good and offers something different that you're looking for. It goes back to what's being associated with your brand. And is it the right association? Does it make sense? Is it credible? Is it relevant? And does it drive somebody to come back and want to do business with you again?
Yeah, several years ago, we hired a project manager who was also kind of in charge of some of the admin stuff for our office, and whenever we would have meetings, it was I asked this gal, I was like, hey, you know what, can you have snacks and waters available for clients, like, just do that. And so she did great. She went and got that stuff, but I noticed that, thinking from her chair and thinking of budget, all that kind of stuff, she would buy the cheapest water possible, usually Walmart water. And so one of the refinements I made on that was, I said, hey, okay, look, these people are paying thousands of dollars to be here, and we're serving them a bottle that crinkles when you hold it and makes that nasty sound, and it's easy to tip over, and tastes a little weird. It's like, it's an unnecessary expense, but I want you to only buy Fiji water from now on. The bottle is beautifully designed. It's it's clear. The water tastes amazing, and I want every client who comes in here to get a Fiji water to drink if they want it. If they don't, we put them back in the fridge. No big deal. But I don't want them looking at a Walmart off-brand logo while they're sitting here buying a logo from us. It's not on brand for us. And so it wasn't even, it wasn't, hey, we need to go brand, we need to go create Voss or something, so we've got some insane, water bottle to give these folks. It was just like, hey, in this arena of bottled water, we can choose the one that is most similar to us, most similar to the experience we want to give a client, so that the whole thing feels like we expected you to be here. We want you to trust that we know the difference between cheap and good. We know the difference between worth it and not worth it. I
I
wouldn't put a Voss bottle on the table because it's too
well,
expensive.
so
You know.
I was going to say, that's absolutely right. I will give you the real world example of, we did some work on the house and the contractor shows up, and he shows up in a Humvee, and I gave him a hard time. And I said, so, my father taught me, who was a small business owner, you buy an American made car because your clients will never second guess how much they're spending with you, and your employees will never ask you for the raise. And nobody knows how much you spent on an American made car. It's a nice car, you can do, but it takes a lot of things off the table. And I said, I'm curious to know, to the contractor, how your other clients react when you show up. He goes, it's funny you asked that. And he's like, it's like, yeah, because you're charging them money and you're showing up with a very expensive car, or at least the perception of a very
Yeah.
expensive car. And maybe you just, don't show up in Porsche, don't show up, maybe an Audi is fine, something, you could, to your point, Fiji water is fine. I mean, it's a great experience, but it's not so over the top that it looks like it's a waste or it's frivolous. It's more, I love the fact that you are considering the environment and the experience that one goes through when they meet with you, as any business should, right? Whether it's our business or their business, they need to be thinking this way. Paint the walls,
Yes. Oh gosh. Yes.
right? Put something in there that feels modern. Change your light color. Simple things that
Carpet,
can,
lighting. Yes.
yeah.
100%.
These
Yeah.
are little things that can go a long way. And we've all been in a
Chairs
restaurant.
also.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, chairs. Like chairs around a conference table, especially if you're meeting with, financial planner, accountants, whoever. If they have cheap chairs and you sit down and you go, oh my gosh, am I going to break this thing? Um, then it's just, I mean, you sit there thinking about your butt more than you think about your dollars, and that's the wrong
Yeah,
thoughts for you to be
agree.
having in that room.
Agree. But and then you think about, okay, so from a restaurant perspective, we've all walked into both. I'm sure we've walked into both types of restaurants. The restaurant that's well lit, the restaurant that looks like they put effort into the design of the backdrop, the ceiling, everything's clean, and then the one that's a little bit darker, older furniture, heavy wood. And I'm not saying it's bad food. I'm just saying it's a whole different feeling, where I mean, what is Bar Rescue is I love Bar Rescue. I don't know if you've ever seen the show, but I mean the gist of it is pretty straightforward. The guy comes in and he tries to figure out why a bar is failing, and he
Yeah,
redoes everything, the staff, and the environment. But when they're done, the environment is just very uplifting and it's welcoming and it wants people to come in. It's simple things that you can just
yeah,
the shape of something can change it. But these are all thoughtful things, and sometimes uh, again, to your point, a financial planner, the balance of, hey, I want to be smart with the money because you're paying me and I'm protecting your money. And I don't want it to seem like I'm making more than you when you're investing with me. That's not what I want to come across. But I also want it to be where I'm not so things aren't so bad that I look desperate. And I look
yeah,
like,
yep,
I
exactly, yeah,
I'm not making anybody money. I'm not even making myself money.
yeah,
And therefore I can't even give you this decent experience. Now that balance with, look, I believe in investing money in your money or your investment, that's a different story, but that's a story to be told. So, but I think there's a balance. And to your point, it could be as simple as not the pen, but the folder, or it could be as
yeah,
simple as thinking through the experience, not the pieces, but more about, did I gather all the pieces together and did I hit print before you got there? That's
yeah,
experiential, right? That's much bigger than a logo,
yeah,
or equally as
and
big, I should say. It's all
yeah, and
related.
I think with a financial planner, even just thinking about the pen situation, right? Because there'd be justification at just about any level. I think that probably if you're in the financial planning world at all, you're not using a big pen. You shouldn't be. Even though, yes, you can buy a box of 100 of them for like $10. But, do something like a Pilot G2 or a Uniball or something like that. The ink flows well. It's easy to sign with, all that. But I also think there's a level of financial planner where when they sign, you give them a Mont Blanc and you go, hey, this is an investment in our relationship. This is not going to be the level of financial planner that I'm going to see,
I
but
was going to say,
there are certain, but there are certain people. Like if you're chasing a certain net worth individual, that you go, hey, this is an investment in our relationship. I know you're going to have other important things to sign because I'm investing in you. Then like that could be appropriate for somebody. Even then, for the love of all that's holy, do not brand a Mont Blanc. Like you can
let the
brand the
Mont
box that
Blanc
you
brand
give them the
stand over
Mont Blanc.
yours. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can brand the box that you have the Mont Blanc in, but absolutely do not put your logo on that thing.
So, so American did this where, and all the airlines do this, where the tier of service and experience that you get walking through the airport and the materials that they use to build walls or anything, furniture, is different based on who you are and um, your tier, your or the mileage. Of course, now I'm losing the power of English. Um, but whatever mileage program they have, if you're gold, silver, platinum, or whatever, executive platinum, that, or how you fly in class of service, that dictates the types of things and the experience that you get. It is, I think, parallel to the experience that you're buying and what you
Yeah.
see. Um, I just did something with, I now fly Delta and I hit a tier uh, with them, or I guess it was 1,000,000 miles is what I hit. And so for 1,000,000 miles over my lifetime, you get a gift. And the gifts were a branded backpack, um, a couple other things, a wine bottle and etched glasses that were based on 1,000,000 miles, a Delta plane with my name and 1,000,000 miles on there, or $1,000. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, $1,000. Because why do I want a bottle of 1,000,000 miler wine? Like, I'm sure it's a very nice bottle. I would hope it is, but it's no, I don't want those things. That's not really true to who I am or what I want. Now, some
I don't
people
need a
may.
Delta backpack for anything,
Right.
right?
I have
Yeah.
a backpack. And frankly, to that point of what you were saying, I'd rather them give me a backpack where it's this type of a backpack and maybe it's a simple little tag on the inside that says
Little
million
card. Yep.
miler, right? You can
100%.
be subtle with these things.
Yep.
Um, I think you're 100% right. I love the idea of just being thoughtful in what you're doing, thinking about it from the customer point of view. What's the interaction? What's the experience? Every little thing matters. These are not things necessarily that you need to invest tons of money into to be successful with. To your point, the Mont Blanc, this poor financial planner that we keep picking on, he doesn't need to hand that out to us. We'd be very happy with the gel impact pen. And oh, this
Yeah.
is really nice. I like this. Yeah, you can get this at Staples. It's not that bad. It's good pen and it lasts forever. Um,
Yeah.
the institutional investor coming out of Morgan Stanley, maybe they're getting the Mont Blanc as a celebration and a big
Yeah.
signing. But that goes back to, and this is what I kept thinking of, a welcome kit, right? What's the
Yeah.
welcome experience and all that? But
Yep.
it's fun. It's fun to think through. And I, from a workshop perspective, to work with clients, let's envision this. Let's go through this journey. I'm doing something now for my business where we are doing our own journey mapping on our customers. And we have two types of clients. We have the agencies who work with us and bring us in on projects. And then we
Hmm.
have the clients direct. And so we go through and we start to think about where and how they work with us and what their decisions are that they go through. What are the triggers? And I'm just starting this exercise now. And it's fascinating to me because I've done it for others in different ways. And to turn that internally to me, the idea of what I'm going to be getting out of this is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Well, I only have one more question for you. The economy has been weird for the last like 4 or 5 years here for businesses, and I mean for everybody. But businesses thinking about their brands in an unpredictable environment where capital isn't quite as free flowing as it used to be. I feel like a lot of people are kind of holding off and they're going, okay, we can maybe get a little bit more mileage out of this brand. We know we need to change, but whatever. I guess just in 2 minutes, what would you say to folks just like how do you manage a brand in an environment that the economics are a little bit unstable, and would you advise them to hold off? Would you say, hey, this is the time to stand out so that you don't lose ground? Or yeah, just like what would you advise people who kind of come to you with the issue of going like, we're not really sure what to do with our brand when the right timing is, kind of like buying a house right now, or you're just like, gosh, interest rates and prices, like, what do we do?
Yeah, that's so I would first say that someone like yourself as a strategist would probably have a much better answer than I would. But that said, when I founded 1010, it was one of the ideas behind it was this premise of almost love it or list it, like another TV show
Hmm.
for real estate. And so rebrands can be expensive, but it doesn't mean that a rebrand is always the right answer. Sometimes it's about making your brand work harder for you. And so ultimately that's where the name 1010 came from, which is about the potential of making your brand work its best. So getting a 10 out of 10, and really trying to figure out how to maximize potential with the brand that you have. So I think it starts with a question of, is your brand still relevant to your strategy and your consumer? And that doesn't mean your logo per se. That could also be your imagery. Is your imagery current? That doesn't cost a lot of money to switch your images out. You're probably paying for it anyway. In the case of American Airlines, they were producing headlines in all caps, which came across as
Hmm.
yelling at people. So when they went through the rebrand, it was turning it into more sentence case, being much more approachable. I think these are little things that you can do. That doesn't cost money to evolve your brand. So I think you ask yourself the question around revolution versus evolution and start to
Yeah.
think about it that way.
Yeah, I think that's great. I also think that's a great place to wrap up. So Darren, if anyone wants to find your work, what's the best place to find you?
Thank you. 1010group.com, all spelled out, TENTENGROUP.com is a great place to get a hold of me. I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can find me there, and reachable through both channels, and would love to talk to anybody about anything related to brand and brand implementation.
Yeah, thanks for being on Growing a Fruitful Brand, and we look forward. Hopefully, we can have you back because I love the way that you think and talk about brand. And as the world changes every day, people just need to be able to figure out how can I keep doing what I want to do and put my best work out in the world. And because we're all trying to provide for our families and make the world a better place. And it's nice to have people like you in our corner helping us figure out what to do with our brands and our businesses.
Well, thank you, Raj. You're very, very kind. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time in speaking with you and look forward to doing it again. Thank you.
Likewise. Thanks, Darren.
Thanks for joining us today on Growing a Fruitful Brand. If you found today's show helpful, don't forget to subscribe and consider sharing it with someone who might also enjoy it.
If you'd like to work with Fruitful on a branding, website, or messaging project of your own, you can always reach out on our website, fruitful.design.
But until next time, don't forget to grow something good.